Can I have y'all's attention? If you don't mind, just settle down for a minute. I'd like to take the opportunity. I'm Dick Brown. If I haven't met you, I think I've met most everybody. But I'm Richard's son, the second one right next to Uncle Bull. He was my father. And what I'd like to do, if you'd allow me a few minutes, ancestry and history has always been important to me. If you don't know about your ancestors, you don't know who you are, because that's where you get most of what you are. Through DNA, your environment has something to do with it, but you get all your traits, your color of your hair, your eyes, and things like that. So ancestry has always been important to me. And in the Brown family, there's been a big gap. My grandfather always thought he was an orphan. He was told by his mother he was an orphan. And so that side of the family we knew nothing about. The Pagets, my grandmother, we knew everything about. We have that family tree and history all the way back. So about 15 years ago, my cousin Wilma and I got to talking, and she had been tracing the family history of her parents and was into genealogy and that type of thing. So we decided that we knew our Uncle Ray, which is the third brother there on the back line, had been trying to solve who his father's father was. And he had spent a number of years digging into it and had just finally hit a brick wall. So he came up with the fact that probably it was a John Brown. And when Grandpa died, Uncle Harold just put J. Matt Brown, which was his name, on his birth certificate as his father. So it's always been confusing as to what the lineage was. And so Wilma and I decided, after we talked a while, that we'd jump in and try to solve this. And that became a 15-year project. We started on this over 15 years ago. The first 4 years, I'm a big city boy. I don't think in terms of small town Kentucky. But Wilma stayed in Kentucky, and she knew that small town Kentucky, back in the 1800s, there wouldn't have been that many guys around. And that my grandfather's mother probably would have stayed in a small area. Well, she came up with the idea that if we located all the eligible men around where, our grandmother lived, maybe we could sort it out. So for 4 years, and Wilma is probably the best analyst and digger up of information that you've ever met. She has crawled through more courthouses and filing cabinets and things like that all over Kentucky. And this went on for 4 or 5 years. And she'd gather up some information, and we'd stay on the phone at night going through it and talking about it. It got so bad that my wife thought I was having an affair with somebody. It was that other woman that I was spending so much time with. But it was fascinating. It literally was fascinating. It was better than a murder mystery, trying to sort through it and dig all this out. Well, we were not making any headway. But finally, I forget what it was, one of those 3 o'clock in the morning, late night things, 21andMe came up and advertising DNA testing. And I thought, that sounds interesting. It didn't go cost much, nothing ventured, nothing lost. So I submitted my sample for DNA testing. And I got back this wealth of information. And I looked at that, and there was cousins and people I was kin to, and just pages on it. And it may have been midnight, but I picked up the phone and I called Wilma and I says, DNA may be the way that we can solve this problem. And so we jumped in, and I'd had my DNA tested, so she had hers tested, and she called up a few more of the cousins and got them tested. And we called up Jim and had him do his DNA test. And the great thing is, we were all kids. You know? We were worried for a while. One of the DNA tests came up bad, and it looked like that her father had been messing around, and maybe she wasn't my cousin. But, you know,
or your father.
Yeah, well, I'm getting about this has been fascinating. Then we came up with the DNA, and it looked like that I had a half-sister, two half-sisters that we had not known about. And so we dug into that and ran through DNA through my grandmother. There was no connection with these two half-sisters. So we figured out that maybe it was my grandfather instead of my dad that was messing around and created these siblings. And this went on and on and on. And in fact, that's what it was. We tracked the DNA down through other people. And he had fathered a couple of other kids while he was married. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about these guys here. At the top are all the brothers, and Darkness and Aunt Dee, my grandparents there. Those people are all gone. That information is not available anymore. And if we didn't get it, it's dead, it's gone forever, unless it happened to be written down and put in a document somewhere. Well, Cousin Wilma has spent countless hours putting all the information that she could develop during the time of 15 years that we were digging and trying to find information. And this is basically the ancestry and descendants of James Madison Brown and Aunt Molly. Yeah. And it's fascinating. There's more information in here than you can imagine about our family. I did today digitize this, and I gave a thumb drive to Wilma, who is going to email it out to anybody that wants a copy of this document. So you need to make sure that Wilma's got your email.
Everybody got that hard copy.
Got the hard copy, but nobody seemed to have one.
7 years ago.
Yeah, nobody seemed to have one when I was trying to locate one. So and in fact, a lot of these pictures in here have been copied so many times, they're bad copies. And Jay and I were talking about seeing if we could dig up originals and maybe redoing some of the pages and get that into the document that goes forward in history. Let me talk a little bit, if you don't mind me carrying on, talk a little bit about why we didn't know my grandfather's last name, or his father. He was a Brown. I grew up as a Brown. For 70 years I thought I was a Brown. And until we got into this research and everything, all of a sudden one day, through this digging around, I found out I'm really a turnip. That was quite a shock, at 70 years old, to find out your last name is not who you thought it really was. So let me tell you how that came about. There were two sisters, Geneva Turner. Geneva Turner was my grandfather's mother. And that's where my Aunt Geneva's name probably came from. But anyway, Geneva Turner was my grandfather's mother. But she never told him that she was his mother. She told him that she got him from an orphanage. And she went to the grave with her. To our knowledge, she never divulged that she was his actual mother. The reason being that through DNA we showed that Mary, her husband, was the actual father of our grandfather. No?
No.
Straighten me out.
All right, first of all, her name was Geneva Tucker.
Tucker.
Now I say Turner or Tucker.
Yeah.
I get Tuckers and Turners mixed up.
And her sister's husband was the father.
Yeah,
Did
Mary.
you say sister's husband?
Mary Tucker
Yeah,
was her sister,
right, Mary
And-
Jo Turner.
and Mary,
Mary's husband was the
Yeah.
father of our grandfather.
read it in here, I'll just she lays it out. Anyway, what happened was that Mary's husband impregnated Geneva. Well, you know, you have to understand, this was 15 years after the Civil War in rural Kentucky. A girl that gets pregnant isn't going to hang around with all of her parents and friends and family. So when she found out she was pregnant, she upped and moved from Harrison County to, what was it, Bass County or Bath County? Bath County, I think, to have her son. And so that's why, and she told my grandfather that he had been an orphan. She picked him up in an orphanage. Well, we started tracking back through DNA to find out who her, I've lost him,
The dad.
but who the father really was. And it turns out it was Mary's husband, George Turner. So George Turner turns out, so I'm a Turner rather than a Brown. And you wonder, well, where did the name Brown come from? Well, back in that day, Smith and Brown were throwdown names. If you had an orphan, and there were a lot of orphans after the Civil War. You named them Brown and Smith and a few other names like that. So obviously Geneva Tucker reached out and grabbed Brown and slapped it on the grandfather, and that's where the Brown name came from. So us Browns are really Turners, but I'm gonna still go by Brown. So it's been a fascinating trail. It's worth sitting down and if you still have a copy of this, dig it out. If not, you're going to get one by email. Ancestry is so important because, again, I point out, these people are gone. All their knowledge, unless we got it captured through word of mouth, is gone and dead. A number of their kids, me and others, are getting older, I'm 84, my mind is going, so, my memories will be gone pretty soon. Yours is already gone. But we're disappearing. And so that's why I thought it was important to get as many of you together as possible to talk about ancestry. One of the things that I see is that you're tending to sit around in little groups that pertain to your own family. Get up and mix and mingle. There's plenty of food out there. You can keep eating until I think 9 o'clock we have the room because we can't take the food home. And meet everybody. make sure you know who they are and where they came from. You know, which one of these people, you know, is in the progression of the lineage. This house, while I'm gone with this group, this house right here, I found out, I didn't even know that was called, or named Mount Airy. It's in Oddville, Kentucky, and that is the home that primarily Ray and Harold grew up in. As best I can figure out, Ray was 15 years old, and Harold, I'm not sure how old he was big. But the interesting part is that when Ray moved into that, he met the young girl right across the pike. It's what they called streets and roads back then, the pike. And she became his wife, Margaret. And Margaret, and some of us are going to go out and look at it. Margaret grew up in a long house. That house across the pike from this one is a log house. And I think they've taken the cladding off and it looks like a log house now. My dad lived in another log house down the pike about 1.5 miles that is now covered with cladding, so you can't tell it's an old log house, a Kentucky log house. But he lived there for quite a while. His dad was a salesman, car salesman, and he said every time the rent come due, they'd move somewhere else. So those are the kind of stories that I got going up. I don't know how much of it's true, but I suspect a lot. This house, Mount Airy, one of the things I wanted to find out, since I have a good group, my father told me that he went into the service in '38. And at somewhere 38, 39, he got a bonus for finishing flight school or something like that. And he used that bonus to buy the farm, which is at Oddville, Kentucky, for his parents. And he and my mother paid on it for years and years and years. Now, part of the story that I don't know is, did some of the other siblings pitch in and help? And I don't know that. He didn't say that. You know, he said that he and Mom did. I was hoping that maybe some of y'all knew from your parents, you know, some of the other siblings, if they all got together and did that. No. Okay. Anyway, it's likely that happened. I just don't know it personally. But anyway, that house was bought somewhere in 39 or 40, and became a homestead for my grandfather. And in fact, I spent many weeks and months in Kentucky here with my grandfather and some of my cousins and all, and really enjoyed it. Actually, I was 6 years old when my parents, you have to know my dad. My dad and Mom took me out in Tyler, Texas, stuck me on an airplane, and I flew from Tyler, Texas, changed planes in Atlanta, and flew into Lexington at 6 years old by myself. And spent a month with my grandfather, and he only spanked me once during that time. I deserved a lot more than that. The other highlight of my memory is they got me a horse. And Uncle Harold had just gotten out of the Navy. And so he'd come and take me on this route. He had a milk route, picking up milk and all. And we'd come home and saddle the horse, and he was teaching me how to ride it. Well, my grandmother was out here with us one day, and we were saddling up the horse, and the horse bent its neck around and bit me in the side. Just to tell you about my grandmother, boy hit that horse square between the eyes so hard that it dazed it and went to its knees. And that was Boy. So, no, that's the history, you know. there's stories like that everywhere. And if we don't start getting some of them down, they're going to be gone forever. So that's why I think groups like this are so important to try to get it down. Wilma has done an outstanding job. Kathleen as Wilma. Catherine and Kathleen and Wilma and Brenda have put this whole thing together this weekend, so thank you. Now what I like to do is open it up. Do you have any questions? Because somebody here might be able to answer.
What was your horse's name?
Star.
Star. Was it a white horse? White?
No, it had a white blotch in the middle of its face though.
Big horse.
No, little horse. I was just tall. It was a big horse to me, but it wasn't that big.
Just jump right in there, Don.
All right, is the house still standing?
No. I was back here and when we were back when Ray was in the hospital. I don't know what year that was. The house was leaning, I don't remember which direction, north or south, by a whole lot. And when we came back for Ray's funeral, the house had been torn down and there was a trailer home sitting on the top of the hill.
But now I actually played and grew up in that house.
Oh, did you?
Oh, really?
I've got pictures of Linda and
Yeah.
I've got pictures of us sitting on that porch.
Well, that sitting on the porch there is Jane, Darvis's daughter, and I don't know who the other one is. But that's how we were dating about when that picture would be, looking at how old we thought Jane was. The house, if you want a little history, the house had no running water, no indoor plumbing. It had electricity, but at 5 degrees below zero, you had to get out and go outside of the outhouse. And the water was collected off the roof, went into a cistern, and they'd pump the water up and bring it in the house, and that's what she cooked with, and had a wash basin. In fact, the wash basin was on the table right, at this table right here, sat right behind Angeline's and Harold's. And they'd come in, that's where they washed their hands before they ate. And that was country life. And, Granddad, I thought it was for me, but I'm sure it was for all the grandkids. The outhouse it was a two-hole. You young kids don't understand that. That's the hole that you sit over. And it was a two-hole. Well, Granddad went over in the corner and built this little bitty hole. And that's where I'd be sitting. And I looked up one day and I said, "Are those for horses?" They were huge. So I had many good times, and I just wanted to share some of it with you. And any other questions? I'm going to try.
Was this a horse?
Yeah, that's Harold on it.
Except he's sitting back.
Yeah, but he was also, I have a picture of him standing on the ass end of it. You know, just standing up there. Yeah. He actually was a good rider. He rode backwards, standing. Anybody?
Comments? Additions?
Well, we're going to mix and meet and get up and meet other people and share stories and all because it's important. And I appreciate the time. Thank you.